Hello there, this is Dave Motohead, and I'm getting uglier and uglier as the years go by. Anyway, I'm out in the garage working, and I'm going to be working on a red convertible today. The guy brought me, he bought it from a junkyard, believe it or not, for a real cheap price, and he got a great deal. Thing's pretty much rust free, and anyway, we're going to be changing the harmonic balancer and the oil cooler seals because they're leaking, and go through the car and fix numerous things that are broken on it. And so I'll go over all that stuff with you guys if you want to watch. Anyway, here you go. There's the Super Vert. I got it from a junkyard, and I've already rebuilt the carburetors on it because they were leaking all over the place, and you can see it's kind of one of those deals where somebody's been working on it that didn't know what they were doing and kind of messed up. Now, this is a really great car. This car just absolutely has no rust on it whatsoever. I've looked over this whole car, and the windshield and everything's great in it. And you can see the rockers are solid, and there's really no rust at all. And I redid the dashboard already. The dashboard was kind of messed up, and all the paint was chipped off it, so I took the dash out and redid it. And when I looked up underneath here, there was no rust at all on this car. So this is actually one of the most solid Corvair convertibles that I've ever seen, even compared to the ones that I get. This one's more solid than any of the ones I have, so this is a great car. Anyway, what we're going to be doing today, first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to get down underneath here, and I'm going to pull this bottom pan off right here because of that wire. That is the wire that goes to the head temperature switch, and instead of running it through the hole, they just kind of pinched it between the sheet metal there, and I don't like that, so I'm gonna pull this bottom piece off and get that wire out of there, and then we're gonna be dropping the engine. And I've already taken all the pieces off the back here and got up to the oil cooler because the oil cooler's leaking. So we've got to pull that off and see what's going on here. So anyway, that's what we're going to start on first. Okay, first thing we're going to do, we're going to get underneath here. We're going to pull this door open a little bit. Get in there, and we're going to pop that clip off. Hopefully you guys can see that. It holds the damper door rod on. Got that popped off. We'll take the clip here and toss it in our magnet thing. I love these magnet things. You just stick them wherever you want to stick them, and they hold your nuts and bolts. And I always have one of those magnet guys laying around here. You know, we got the damper door disconnected, and we can actually see that wire. I might be able to just pull that wire out of there. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and take it all the way off. And I've got my handy duty driver here. I know I'm a cheater, but that one's on there. I don't like to sit around and wait and put those in the deal here. I need a different one for that. No sense in wasting time when you can use a power tool in my hold it. Alright, we have to get us a small 1/4 inch for that little guy. I think I got one in my little bucket of goodies here. There we go. Anyways, so we'll pull this sucker off of there. Just drop right out. There you go. And you can look up underneath there and you can look at all the push rods and you can see this little guy right here. And we're gonna pull, look at how that's pinched in there like that. That's just not good at all. You can see where it's all pinched and messed up, and we'll take these out of there too. Yep, I'm gonna have to get me another driver for that. Anyways, we're gonna take that off of there and we're gonna reroute that wire. So that's the first step. Okay, next thing I've done is disconnect the shift shaft lever, the shift coupler from the transmission with the little pin right there. I disconnected this anyways because of the shift tube was bent, and I blocked it up here and I stuck a jack underneath there and I jacked up the shift tube until I got it nice and straight, so the car would barely shift. It had a big bow in it from somebody screwing it up. So anyway, I did that, and I think the clutch pivot will be alright because I'm not going to let the engine down that much. Something else that you might want to look at, if you see this, hopefully I'm getting that, it was rubbing on the old heater hose there, and you can see it's kind of, I know I'm upside down, but you can see it's hourglassed it, so that should probably get replaced at some time. And that's that. Anyway, I've got the wire up out of there and all that. The next thing I've done is disconnect the perimeter seal. You want to pull that thing up, and also if you look up in there, this car got kind of cool mufflers on it. They're kind of spun the wrong way, but they were connected to the body up in here, so I had to disconnect that, and I'm going to change that. I'm going to run these mounts over to here, maybe to one of these things, to mount it to the engine tin so it won't rock. You know, when this motor's rocking here and you've got these mufflers attached to the body, it's going to loosen this up right here because the motor's going to rock and the muffler's not. So that's something else I need to fix. And then what else you want to do is you want to go around and disconnect these guys. This car didn't have them. I put new ones on. But you want to disconnect those, and I've disconnected the coil wires and pretty much anything else that is going to get in the way when you drop the motor down. You want to disconnect everything around the outside. And also, if you look here, the way this ground wire is hooked on, it's hooked right to the battery hold down, and that bolt should actually be over here, bolt to the body instead of there. So I'm going to have to change that, and you know, I'll redo some of this stuff and try to make this car right. This guy's a real nice guy, and we want this car to be right for him. So anyway, that's the next step, is to disconnect everything, so when you lower the motor down, you don't pull anything out of there. So we'll move on to the next step now. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is position our engine jack underneath here, and so we can let this engine down. I've got everything disconnected, and so we're going to go ahead and unbolt this thing, and bolts are right up in here. Get on there and give them a little twist. We're just going to unbolt. Jack, make sure. There we go. Now we can start letting this thing down. We got our engine jack on there. That way we're going to be able to get to that harmonic balancer. Just let it down a little bit and look around in here and see what's hitting. Looks like we should be good. It's about as far as we can go right there. The oil filter. Should probably take that oil filter off. I'm gonna have to get that oil filter off, I imagine. Get that out of there. Anyways, we got our engine let down, and we can go ahead and take this off. Now pick that nut. Get that out of the way. Now we can get right to that harmonic balancer. So we can pull the tray of doom off. And you can see what's in there. A bunch of good stuff. And, anyway, so now we've got that done. We'll move on to the next step, and we'll kind of clean some of this stuff up in there because it's kind of ugly. So go on to the next step. Okay, we've got the oil filter removed. You can look up in there, the oil filter's off, and we're ready to take the harmonic balancer out. Or in this case, it's a solid pulley, and we're changing it to a harmonic balancer because it should have one, and that's something I recommended to the owner, and he said go ahead and change it. So something else I noticed while I'm down in here is that piece of sheet metal right there is not in its proper slot. And so, you know, it's when you get into these old cars, it's just a case of the might as well haves, and it seems like every time you take them apart you find more and more stuff wrong with them that you need to fix. And that little grommet right there is where that head temperature wire is supposed to go. So put the hat cam back on, and we'll pull this harmonic balancer, or in this case pulley bolt, off. That's kind of a short one. And then we'll chuck up our puller on there. Puller in the holes. Want to make sure that you use the proper dude here that fits in there so you don't screw up your end of your crank. Get this thing going on there. Give those a couple of turns. You don't want to drive those in too far because it'll go all the way through the pulley and screw up the seal and stuff, but we're going to replace the seal anyways. You want to try to get those things balanced out so when you pull it off there it's nice and straight. So that one's a little bit in there, so you want to get those things kind of balanced in there to where your puller's nice and straight, and then you should be able to just pull that. Okay, that's looking pretty straight there. And you should be able to just put your little impact wrench on there, make sure you reverse the direction, and there you go. One removed pulley. We don't want that. It's a solid pulley. We want the harmonic balancer. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to change this seal out, because might as well put a new seal in there. And what's this? Yeah, another chunk of good stuff. So anyway, let me grab the new seal and we'll pull this out and redo that. That's the next step. Okay, well, after pulling all the sheet metal stuff apart and putting that part back on, we got us a new harmonic balancer, and I always put some marks on it and mark the timing mark, and I sand the paint off there so we have a good seal. And here we got a new seal. I put a little bit of grease on the inside of that seal, and actually I'm going to put a real thin film of motor oil on the inside of this thing so it'll slide onto the crankshaft easier. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, here we are back at the engine, and I had to take all this stuff off to get that little piece back in there in the right proper spot, and you see it's in there now. So now we're going to pull this old seal out of there, and I have this bent screwdriver that seems to work good for doing that. You just kind of go around and pry it out. There we go. There's the old seal. And anyway, so we'll take the old seal out and clean around the perimeter here. And it's got a bunch of old crusty you can see the slinger in there. Anyway, looks like I'm gonna have to get in there and scrape some of that stuff out. It's got some kind of gasket sealer in there that doesn't look like it's sealed very well. So I'll go ahead and clean that up, and then we'll put the seal in there and put the new balancer on. Okay, I've got the sealing surface all cleaned up there. So we'll go ahead, and what I've done here on the new seal is I've greased it up. A little grease in there. So we're going to want to put a little bit of gasket cinch around the outside of this thing. This is me and Bear Chet's favorite type of stuff. I'll put a little bit around the seal, keep it from leaking. It also will help it. It'll help it seal the outside, and it'll also help it push in the hole there. And then we just want to take this new seal. We just want to stick it right up in there, and they just push right in, and let that stuff set up for a little bit. I twist it a little bit, make sure it's nice in there, and kind of a loose fit, but I guess it's not going to go anywhere. You can see on this one where the old pulley was rubbing on the seal kind of a little bit there. So anyways, we got our new seal in there, and I can tell by pushing on it that it's all seated in there. Then we want to take our harmonic balancer that I've lubed up the inside of it with a little bit of a film of engine oil, a little 30 weight in there, and I can see my keyway right down the side. I want to stick this sucker in there, and I can feel where the keyway lines up, and then you just kind of want to push it on there a little bit. You don't want to really hit it with a hammer. You can use your hand a little bit. I can feel it moving and going on. And then what I've done is I take the bolt, I take the big fat washer off of there, and I stick a little washer on there so that bolt will go deeper in there and I can catch the threads. Then I want to put that bolt in there, and I'll drive it on with the impact wrench. You can see this is the stock washer, and we won't get enough threads on there. So I want to put this thing on there, and you can watch it. Okay, that's good enough. You don't want it to go all the way in. You want to be careful with that. And you can see it's threaded in there. Then you want to take and put the stock one back on, and I always check to make sure that the keyway is lined up in there. And it looks like it is. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. Then you can put the stock one back on there. Hit it with the impact wrench a little bit. I can see it suck up. Then you want to torque that sucker. Let's see, now we got us a nice harmonic balancer on there. And we're actually lined up on top dead center. And then you want to take the torque wrench and you're going to torque that sucker to about 80 pounds. Actually 70 pounds is good. Probably going to have to put it in gear and pull the emergency brake. So we'll go ahead and do that. Put her in first gear. Oh yeah, I got that disconnected and pull the emergency brake. And probably it's going to move because I've got the shift linkage disconnected, but I can always tighten this up later before I'm done. Yeah, it's going to move, but it's tight enough right now. But anyway, I'll have to put it in gear and tighten that up later. Anyway, so that's pretty much got the harmonic balancer on there. And now next thing I'm going to do is take this oil cooler off there and replace the seals in that, because the oil cooler seals are leaking. So that's next. Okay, for taking the oil cooler off, we're going to want to get down in here and loosen up this bolt. That's supposed to have the battery cable hooked to it anyways. But it doesn't look like it does. Put that up in there. What we want to do is we want to loosen this shroud here a little bit so we can pull that thing out. So what I always do is just loosen up these shroud bolts a little bit, so once we undo that oil cooler we can pull it out of there and get it nice and straight. And anyway, I pulled that off there because I'm gonna put the ground back on there like it's supposed to be. So we'll do that. I'll go ahead and loosen all those bolts up next. Okay, got all my shroud bolts undone. Got to take that bolt off right there and that bolt off right there to pull that thing out of there. And we'll go ahead and undo this bolt. I always use these thin ones, these little guys. That one's loose already. I got me a bucket down there because more than likely it's going to leak. And then we'll take and loosen this up. And I saw a little bit of oil leaking right out from underneath here. So I'm kind of thinking it's coming out of the two O-rings in there. A lot of times people tighten these damn things up so freaking, just like this one. Well, I can tell you right now that's why that's leaking. That should be about, I think, 7 to 13 pounds. I can't get that. Gets a little breaker bar here, and somebody tighten that thing up tight. There we go. It's probably gonna leak now. So I got me a little can down there. That thing was on there tight, baby. That's probably why it was leaking. hopefully they didn't ruin the, there we go. Let that drain for a little bit. Make a mess. That's probably why it was leaking. That thing was probably torqued on there. I don't know. I shouldn't have to use a breaker bar to get that off. Anyway, we'll let that drain for a little while and then pull it off the rest of the way. And I can just pull it off right now probably. There we go. There we go. Flip this up. See if we can see where it was leaking. I'm gonna have to clean that thing up. Well, you can see those. You can see those O-rings are pretty much flattened out and hammered. So I imagine this thing was leaking from there. So we'll clean all that up and then we'll come back and replace those. Well, if you look at this thing, you can see that there is silicone all over it. Silicone. So that kind of shows me right then and there that this was leaking at one time. Those things are pretty beat up. So it shouldn't be that flat. So we'll get in there and we'll clean those things up. Put new O-rings in there. You can see where it's all squished down and ugly looking. So we'll get in there and clean all that stuff up and put new O-rings in there with a little bit of gasket cinch around them, and we'll see if that seals it up. Well, that's our next goal here. Okay. Well, we're letting the oil cooler drain because I'm gonna clean that thing up and get all the crud off of it. But just wanted to show you guys what we got here. Here is the oil cooler seals we took out. And if you get out here in the sun, I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're all flattened and gross looking. And if you look at them, you see it's got a ridge around it. Anyways, if you look at this and you look at these here, oops, here's the difference. Here's the difference in those. So that's what happens when you tighten those things down too much. They get flat and they get a ridge on them, and there's no way that thing's going to seal. So I mean, if you look at the new one and look at the old one, you can see where the old one's completely flat and it's hard. It's got a ridge on it. It's got a big old ridge around the edge of it. Anyway, so I'm pretty sure, 99% sure that's the reason why it was leaking. So we'll put those new seals in there, and then that ought to take care of that. Okay. After cleaning up our oil cooler, making sure we got nice clean sealing areas, and actually taking my little hammer here on the bench and straightening all the shrouds on it and making it nice and straight. And I've got down underneath here, and I've cleaned this area all up nice and good, so we can seal these things up. I want to make sure those fit, and they do. So I'm going to put a little teeny bit of gasket cinch on these little O-rings, just for extra insurance. Probably doesn't need them because they're good Viton ones, but just a little teeny bit, just right around the sealing area. Not too much. I want to get it out of there. I'm going to stick that up in the hole here. We got one. And just a little teeny bit. You don't need much. just to make sure that it don't leak. I don't want to do this twice, and I don't like that silicone stuff. Stick it in that hole there. Hopefully I'm getting this with the camera, and I'm going to just go around and do a little teeny bit around the outside of this thing. Just a little bit. Just to make sure it seals up. And then we're going to take our oil cooler. We're going to wiggle it back up in there underneath the shroud. I'm hoping I can get that in there. There we go. And the hole's lined up. And we're going to line that up. And once the bolt gets started on there, we'll know we're in the right spot. Kind of wiggle it around a little bit. Put that bolt in by hand as much as you can. You can see that hole's lined up there, so we know we're lined up. And then we'll get our other bolt here. Which one is it? This one here. I'll stick that in there by hand. Get that lined up. I always put the bolts in loose by hand to make sure they don't strip, and everything lines up easier that way. There, we got our oil cooler back on, and then we'll take our little thing here and we'll just snug that up a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to torque that. I've got my little 3/8 torque wrench here. I'm going to set that to 12 pounds. About 12 psi ought to do it. And we'll just get that nice and snug, and there we go. About 12 psi ought to do it. Don't do it too tight, because if we do it too tight, then we're going to end up with a leaky oil cooler like it was with flat O-rings and stuff when we took it off. So we'll tighten this. Oh, that's a 7/16 it looks like. Well, that's actually a 1/2 inch. Anyways, we'll tighten this bad ride back up, and we'll put all the sheet metal back on. Get that kind of snug. You don't want to go too tight. That's why I use these little teeny tools when I'm going into aluminum, so I don't get them too tight. And actually, while we're here, we will tighten up our... Got too many tools going here. Anyway, I put this in gear, and I'm going to torque that harmonic balancer bolt while I'm here too. Now that it's in gear, it should stop. There we go. Come on, car. That's tight enough. 70 pounds there. I had to put the emergency brake on and stuck it in gear so it'll quit spinning. Okay, so that's got us a harmonic balancer with the new seal, and fixed seals on the oil cooler, and fix this dude. We'll run the wire back through there in the right spot, and we'll jack it back up into place, put our bottom pieces on here, and then we'll start it up and see if we don't have any leaks. So there you go on that. Okay, we've got our black hole of doom here, which must go on before the motor mount, and look at that now, because it'll probably never look like that again. I actually found a lot of bolts in here that go different places. Actually, I did find one that goes up in here. That'll work out good. Anyway, so we'll slide this puppy dude back on. Get that back on there. And we'll put our motor mount back in there. We'll reach in our little bucket here. We'll get all of our little washers that came off of there. Guess you really don't need washers, but we'll put them on anyways. Anyway, we'll go ahead and tighten this thing back up. And I guess we could torque those to like 25 foot-pounds or so. I don't think there's a spec on those. I haven't found one. Yeah, just get them tight, but we can torque them down, I guess. Yeah, look at that. You guys see that? I got a broken socket there. See it? Open up. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Anyways, I'll need to get a new socket if I'm going to torque that, so we'll go do that right now. Get us a different socket. Okay, we've got our black hole of doom bolt keeper piece on and our motor mount back on. Now what we got to do is just jack this sucker back up into place. And actually with this jack you can do it by your foot. And go in here and look and make sure our holes are lining up. Looks like everything's going to line up good. Oh, I got it hooked onto my shoelace. Anyway, well, looks like that's going right up into place there. So we'll jack this up. You can kind of feel with your fingers to see if it's in place. Oh, my poor jack's running out of juice. Time to rebuild the jack. Anyway, you get that on there and you put your little keeper up in there. That's kind of weird. Doesn't want to go on for some reason. Huh. And get our nuts started by hand. Let you guys all know how that works. I can't get that on the camera because I have to stick my head funny, but I guess I could. Hey, hopefully you can see that. And we'll zippity doo dad our bolts into place. Once those are tight, don't want to get them too tight, but we get them tight enough to pull the jack out of there, then we'll torque them down later. I'm going to start this up to make sure that it doesn't leak, and then we can. So now we got everything bolted back into place there. Love that little hose reel. And all we got to do is let our jack down. Pull the jack out of there. Clean up our mess a little bit. And there you go. Now what we'll do is we'll hook all this stuff back together up in here and get it all good, and we'll start it up and redo this wiring and make sure it doesn't leak. But that's Harmonic balancer and oil cooler 101. This is Dave Motorhead. It's probably about 100 degrees in this garage right now, kind of hot, but you know, it's getting that way around noon, about 12:30 right now, I guess you'd say. And anyway, that's changing a harmonic balancer and fixing oil cooler leak 101. And I'll make another video once we start this thing up, make sure it quits leaking, make sure everything's good. We'll button it together and give it back to the gentleman, and there you go. Thanks for watching.